Hello and welcome back to In Defence of the Traditional Martial Arts. It's been over a month now since I posted a video, so I thought I'd better stay true to my word about what I said I was going to talk about last time, which is the Chinese broadsword or sabre, depending on what you want to call it. There was an interaction I had with someone in the comments section to a video. The video was kind of a McDojo-esque video. A guy, I think it was a bit unfair. I think the video was a bit unfair. It wasn't a McDojo in my opinion. The guy didn't look like he was fully knowledgeable about the form he was doing. But yeah, I think it looked legitimate to me. It looked like a very basic form. But that's besides the point. In the comment section, I come across somebody that said, you know, like any time the guy's hand come out during the form, that was to symbolise like a scabbard, like that you would be using a scabbard as well as the sword. And I thought, well, I'll jump in here and say that that's not the truth. That quite obviously this form has kind of similar movements to the form I do, and that, you know, whenever you see a hand go out, you're either pushing or you're grabbing and pulling. And so I offered this opinion, and this guy told me that that wasn't the case, that, you know, the vast majority, whenever you see a empty hand going out, it symbolises a scabbard. And the argument went off on tangents, it went all over the place. Like I say, I'll post a link to it in the description if you're feeling like you want to read the whole argument. But yeah, first and foremost, my main argument for why that isn't the case, like, yeah, you got your sword, you got your scabbard, right? Now, a sword is a backup weapon, right? It's a sidearm. This isn't like your primary weapon when fighting in like a battlefield. But as a sidearm, and even as this guy gave as, you know, a counter to my argument that it's a sidearm battlefield weapon, he said, well, you know, city guards would be armed with these, I suppose, a bit like a policeman with, you know, a pistol. But regardless, it's a sidearm, and this part of the scabbard would have like a harness attached to it, which would then go, you know, it would be attached down here so that you can draw it, you can walk around with your sabre, and it's for comfort, it's for ease of use. So that being the case, how do you then take the scabbard, which is attached to your belt, and then use it as, you know, a second weapon? That's the main argument right there. Like, I'm not saying nobody ever picked up a scabbard and used it as a weapon. I'm not saying that there aren't cases of that happening, although even then I'm quite doubtful, because if we take out the sword and just go with the scabbard, you know, this sword is actually, it's quite thin, it's quite small. You know, a lot of sabres would have been a lot thicker, but even so, and I've got very big hands as well. You know, I'm a tall person, but look, that is not a grip that you know, it's not going to take a lot to have that knocked out of your hand. Now, the other thing about like, this is quite a solid wood, but even so, you know, it's not really, it's not weighted right. It's not exactly, you know, I don't think if someone's like got a sword, or, you know, what would most likely come across if you're using this is a, you know, a pole arm, like a spear or a halberd or something. It's, even if you try to kind of, it's just gonna crack this thing. You're not. This isn't made for that kind of action. So yeah, that's my next reason. You know, it's awkward. Why use this when you've got, you know, a perfectly good sword to parry, to block, and to strike with. Like the guy was saying that that quite often people would use like fans as, like, you know, like a kind of, I guess, what would you call it? You know, where you've got rapier and you've got your dagger to parry, and that, you know, there are forms that exist that use the scabbard, or even like whips and things like that. And my counter to that was, if that was the case, then you would have, you know, if I had a form that involved the scabbard, I've got my sword, so I'd use the sword and I'd use the scabbard and I'd do the form. To counter what I said, he then said that, well, he posted links to videos where there was a guy using a fan and a sword, and there was a guy, I think he was using like a whip and a sword. I can't remember. He might have posted one. It was a straight sword with a scabbard to the straight sword, which is much more useful if you're going to parry. You know, so you're talking about more of a dueling sword, and a straight scabbard would be more for parrying. But even so, even then, you know, that's a rarity. And these forms, quite obviously, looked a hell of a lot different to a normal broadsword form, because you've got something else that you're using. And, you know, that was the proof in itself. He's posted these videos. They use a whip, they use a fan, they use the scabbard in the form. It wasn't an imaginary whip, it wasn't an imaginary like fan. They had these implements in their hands. So if the form was supposed to have a scabbard in it, you would have an actual scabbard. And yeah, I'm going to do another video, because I bought a spear to show, because again, you know, this is a sidearm. This is, you know, if you were an archer, or, you know, you had a spear or a halberd or any sort of polearm, yeah, this is what you'd use if that got broken, or, yeah, got taken off you, or, yeah, you found yourself in a bad position. So most of the applications to the form that I do are used against an actual spear. You know, they can be adapted to use against another sword or a shorter weapon, but for the most part they're against a spear, or, you know, a halberd. And you deflect a blow, you'll reach out to grab the spear, because you're not going to want to grab a sword really, but grab the spear. And that's really what you want to do with any sort of polearm, is to grab hold of the wooden shaft, because, you know, it's very hard to stab if you've got hold of it. So I'm going to show a few of the applications to the form in the next video, but I really just wanted to get this out there, just to kind of dispel this weird viewpoint that this person had. So just to reiterate, you know, the scabbard's attached to, so you're not going to be out, you know, what you're going to do, hold on sir, I've just got to untie my scabbard so that I can use it as a weapon. You know, you got the fact that it's not a very particularly strong construction. It's just two bits of wood, like, sort of glued together. You've also got the fact that it's quite a wide scabbard. You know, your hand isn't really going to have a great grip on it, so it's not going to be much use for parrying and for blocking and for striking. And why would you strike with a scabbard when you've got a nice sharp sword that you could stab with instead? And then, yeah, the other thing being, if the forms were supposed to have a scabbard in it, then you'd have your scabbard in the form, and it'd look a hell of a lot different to, the usual broadsword form. And yeah, so I think the problem is, because I'm not saying, you never had anybody walk around with the sword over their shoulder or, this kind of thing, but like, why would you even have a scabbard? Like, the whole point of this is to hold the blade. Yeah, and it's for ease of use. If you're a city guard, you really walk around with your sword all day. And I think this is a problem with traditional martial arts, especially like kung fu. Massive problem is that people can't dispel, the myth from reality, and it's the fantasy, the films, and it kind of looks cool when you've got the hero walking around with a sword in his hand. And the other thing being, like, if you've got lots of extras and all the rest of it, it's a lot cheaper to just give them the sword than it is to come up with all of these like little leather harnesses that then attach to a belt. And so you get these people that, and you see these movies where they're doing all these flashlight moves with the sword and the scabbard, deflecting like lots of people. And it looks great. The fantasy's great. The reality is totally different. So that's my video on this subject. This one's probably a bit crap, to be fair, but I just wanted to get these arguments out of the way before I do the good video with my daughter, when I can convince her to use the spear, and show you some of the actual applications that you would use, and also I'll chuck it in there, but why it would be a bad idea to use the scabbard against the spear. So if you've watched this far, well done. I think this is a bit of a boring video, but yeah, I just felt like I really needed to get this out there. It was a weird discussion. Have a look if you want, or not. I'd advise not. I'll put the link in the video. Thanks for watching, and yeah, I'll catch you at the next video, which will be more entertaining, I'm sure. See you soon.